In the 2021 draft, Trendon Watford was one of my favorite sleepers. So I'm intrigued by playmaking bigs that show flashes of passing ability, especially if they're able to score a little bit themselves as well. Now, if he can end up being a good three-point shooter and a guy that's able to knock down threes, then you're really going to have to pick your poison with him, either get out all the way and take away that three, and then he's a threat to drive by you and get to the rim himself and finish himself, or make the right kick-out pass out of that scenario. That is kind of the idealistic vision of him as an offensive player. And since we're on the topic of sleepers, this video is sponsored by Manta Sleep Mask. So my friend Borna swore by these things. He got me one, and it has revolutionized my sleep. In case you can't tell, this room is kind of already a cave, but this mask blocks out 100% of light. It's also very comfortable. I kind of just want to wear it the rest of the video. They have a ton of other types of specialty sleep masks, and I'll get into those in the future. But if you want to check them out now, you can click the link in my description, and you can also use the promo code Uprise for 10% off. Now let's jump into the video. So as you guys should know by now, I did player previews before the season, and in these review videos, I like to take a look at what was said in those previews. Here's some of what I've said from Trendon Watford's preview. If Watford can become a better three-point shooter, it makes it a lot easier for him to get minutes just being a floor spacer, especially as a small ball center. He's not going to be able to compete too well with some of the bigger centers in the league, but if he can stretch it out to three, then it becomes a problem for some of the bigger centers in the league. Now let's take a look at his defensive game, and this is where I was really impressed with Trendon Watford last year. He wasn't tabbed as a good defensive player coming into the league, but his IQ is what really impressed me. He seems to see offensive plays developing pretty quickly, and that was impressive for a rookie, especially an undrafted one who only spent 2 years in college. Assuming the bench unit's going to try and force a lot of turnovers and play fast, I think Trendon Watford can be a part of that. And it's not even that he's super quick, he just recognizes things quickly. I don't trust him switched out onto some of the quicker small forwards in the league, and definitely not guards, but I don't think he's a guy that will necessarily get absolutely abused in those situations. That's something that I'll be watching for this year. But then also, for how smart he is, he has to meet offensive players pretty much outside the paint because he doesn't jump the highest and doesn't have the greatest length. So there is some question marks of him in rim protection situations, and that is also something that I'll be looking for this year. So those were the thoughts going into the season. Let's see how he fared. This season, Trendon Watford played in 19 minutes a game, played in 62 games, averaging a shade over 7 points, almost 4 rebounds and 2 assists per 36. That extrapolates out to 14, 7, and 4. My goals for Trendon Watford on a per 36 basis were 15 points. He was a shade under that. 9 rebounds. He did struggle in that department. We'll talk about that. And I also wanted to see him get 2.5 steals plus blocks, as last year he had 2.2 of those. He only had 1.4 steal plus blocks per 36 this year. Trendon Watford was not a defensive playmaker. I also wanted to see him shoot 2 3-point attempts per 36 minutes. He shot 1.9, so the volume was about what I was hoping for from his 3-point shooting, and he also shot well from there as we take a look at the percentages. 60% from 2 and 39% from 3 is pretty dang good. A true shooting percentage of 62.5% shows that Watford was an efficient scorer and player this year. I had a 2-point percentage goal of 60% for him, so he surpassed that. And then my 3-point percentage goal was only 33%, so he beat that by 6.1 percentage points. Now, it is still a small sample size in terms of his 3-point shooting. 25 for 64, it's good. It's a step in the right direction. That 39% looks good on the stat sheet, but I'm not sure he would be a 39% 3-point shooter if he was shooting 4 or 5 attempts per game. He basically only shot wide open threes, and sometimes even passed them down, but still, the fact that he was able to knock down a decent percent has me listing this as my first positive. I think it's crucial for Watford to be able to knock down threes in order to play the power forward position. It's a lot harder to find shooting centers, although it is getting easier and easier, but Watford's ability to stretch the floor makes him a little bit easier to play the power forward position, and his position in his role is something that we will get into. It also allows him to attack closeouts. Watford's not the quickest player, so being able to make guys run out at him allows him to drive the lane. We just didn't really see guys run out at him because he wasn't really respected as a 3-point 3-point shooter despite his percentage, and he did trend in the right direction. He shot the ball well to end the year when the Blazers were already tanking, so it'll be interesting to see the development of his 3-point shot going into next season. The second positive for Watford is the biggest one in my opinion, and that is his slashing. There's a lot of good that comes from this, but Watford, with his ability to handle the ball, is able to get into the lane and make things happen both for himself and others. We saw that all year this year, and it was the clear-cut positive for him. There's a couple different things that I like when he gets going downhill. One of them is his floater. For a big man, he has a really solid floater. I'd be interested to see the percentages on it, but I have to sit here and assume it was a good percentage because he seemed almost automatic on a lot of his floaters. Being able to stop at 5 to 6 feet and being able to hit that push shot is huge for a big man, especially one like him who isn't the most athletic around the rim, isn't going to rise up and finish over anyone. Being able to not have to get all the way to the rim and then try and make things happen there is a plus for Trendon Watford. And then another thing I like coupled with his slashing is his passing ability. He made a bunch of really nice passes. We saw him drive, stop like he was going to shoot that floater, and then throw a lob to Shaedon Sharpe cutting baseline a lot of times this season. He made good reads in terms of dump out passes, in terms of kickouts as well. He showed that he can be a short roll playmaker if teams trap Dame and he's the pick and roll big man. His passing ability for a big is legitimate. And then I also enjoy his craftiness. He has a level of craftiness to him, both with how he finishes in the paint, but also with his ball handling that I honestly enjoy. It's fun to watch. And these combinations of skills make him a very intriguing big man. But as far as the negatives go, the first negative is, what is his position? Trendon Watford played a ton as a backup center this year. That did not work so well. We will get into the reasons why, but he is very undersized for the backup center position. At the power forward position, he might be a little slow defensively, and we still need him to prove that he can shoot the ball consistently in order to space the floor. So at a power forward position, he's a little rough as well. The biggest problem with Trendon Watford is, what is his position? And the second problem with him is, what is his role? Because it's one thing to slot a guy in as the 4 or the 5. If he plays next to a shooting center, he's probably fine at the 4. If his 3-point shot is legitimate, then he can play next to a center that can't shoot. But Watford's role is interesting. He's kind of a ball dominant player. He's good offensively when he has the ball in his hands, but against some of the better teams this year, Watford really struggled making things happen at the same rate as he has in his career against teams that aren't so good. So if Trendon Watford is going to have a role on a winning team, what is that role? As an undersized big whose skills involve him having the ball in his hands, I just don't think he's good enough to justify having a ball dominant role. So this is where Watford has to continue to improve his 3-point shot and continue to improve his cutting ability, try and get a little bit more athletic so that he's able to be a better off-ball player, because without that, his role is questionable. The third negative for Watford this season is the biggest disappointment for me, and that is his defense. He showed flashes of being a smart defender last year. It was a knock on him coming into the draft, but I was thoroughly impressed, comparative to expectations, with Watford's defense last season. This season, not so much. I thought he took a little bit of a step back. He seemed to get lost more often than not. One of the positives last year was he was consistently in the right position. This season, that was not the case. And it could be a product of who was playing around Trendon Watford. The team was a mess defensively, and it's always hard to tell the difference between guys that are truly messing up and guys that are confused because of what their teammates are doing in terms of their teammates messing up. So Watford's kind of one of those guys, but he had a lot of awareness lapses last season, mental lapses, very silly defensive mistakes, especially off the ball. And then in terms of rim protection, he's a non-factor there, which is part of the reason why you can't really play him at the center spot. And the other reason why you can't play him at the center spot is his rebounding. He's not a terrible rebounder at the power forward position. He's not a good rebounder at the center position. 7 rebounds per 36 playing the majority of his minutes at center show a big issue with this team in terms of the lack of big man depth that they had this past season. And it showed up in the rebounding a lot of times, especially without Yusuf Nurkic, where the Blazers bigs just could not rebound well enough. Watford needs to do a better job boxing out. He needs to get a little bit more athletic so he can rise vertically and get rebounds. Rebounding was a major issue for Watford. And then the fifth and final problem was his turnovers. With a playmaking big, you're going to have some turnovers. You're going to have some sloppy moments, but I thought he had a few too many of those this year. I definitely think he needs to clean that up. Now, Watford's future is this. He has a non-guaranteed contract for next season at $1.8 million. That contract becomes fully guaranteed if he's still on the roster on June 30th, which is the first day of free agency. So if Watford's still on the team, that contract will be guaranteed by then. And then going into next offseason, the team will have a club option for the 4th year of his deal worth almost $2 million. I expect one of two things to happen with Watford. I either expect him to be here next year, or I expect him to get traded as salary filler. I don't expect the Blazers to waive him, and there's really no point to, because you can always do it in the preseason and just take the small cap hit, and his salary could be needed to push the Blazers over a threshold in order to match something that they're bringing in via a trade. So I don't expect Trendon Watford to get waived. I expect his contract to end up getting guaranteed at some point, and then he'll be used in a trade or just kept on the roster, because I think he's too good to not bring back on a minimum contract compared to waiving him. There's obviously questions with his role, but he is a talented player. But in order to become a better role player, I think he needs to continue to work on his three-point shot and figure out if there's things he can do to become a little bit more athletic, maybe lose a little bit of weight so he's a little bit better at the power forward spot. He definitely needs to find a role going into next year. As far as the grade for Watford this season, I give him a B-. He did a decent job meeting my expectations from a skill set standpoint. The defense was a major disappointment, so I have to knock him down a rung there. A lot of my worries with Watford aren't really in his control. It has to do with his height and athleticism and role and position and so forth, and that's not really something he can easily change, so I don't knock him down too much for that in terms of grading his performance this season. Offensively, I think he was a good player. Defensively, he struggled, so that kind of grades out to a B- in my opinion. Let me know what you would grade Trendon Watford down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of him going into this offseason. What is the best role for Trendon Watford? That's something I want you guys to tell me in the comment section below, because I've been struggling to figure it out. I think at this point it's probably a power forward, but can he play some big? Maybe he should be a 3. I don't know. I don't know what he should be. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Once again, thank you to Manta Mask for sponsoring this video. Check out the link in the description box below with the promo code Uprise, and I am out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, peace out. Go Blazers.